Elaine, Arkansas, in 1919, was a small town surrounded by vast expanses of cotton fields. The town's economy and daily life were deeply intertwined with the cotton industry, which was the lifeblood of the region. Life for most people revolved around the cycle of planting, tending, and harvesting cotton. This agricultural rhythm dictated the pace of life, with entire families, including children, working long hours in the field. Many black families worked as sharecroppers, a system where they farmed land owned by white landowners in exchange for a share of the profits. This arrangement was supposed to be mutually beneficial, but in reality, it was heavily skewed in favor of the landowners. However, this system often trapped black families in a cycle of debt and poverty. Sharecroppers were frequently charged exorbitant prices for supplies and rent, making it nearly impossible to save money or improve their living conditions. White landowners held most of the power, and black sharecroppers faced discrimination and unfair treatment. The racial dynamics of the time meant that black workers had little recourse against exploitation and abuse. After World War I, returning black soldiers hoped for better treatment and opportunities. They had served their country with honor and bravery, and they believed that their sacrifices would lead to greater equality and respect at home. They had fought for their country, and they were no longer willing to accept second-class citizenship. These veterans became vocal advocates for civil rights, inspiring their communities to demand fair treatment and justice. This combination of economic hardship, racial prejudice, and newfound hope for change created a tense atmosphere in Elaine and across the South. The struggle for equality and justice was met with fierce resistance, leading to rising tensions that would eventually boil over into conflict. In 1919, black sharecroppers decided to take a stand for their rights. They were tired of the relentless exploitation and the oppressive conditions under which they had to work. The promise of freedom and equality that had been made to them after the Civil War seemed like a distant dream, and they were determined to make it a reality. They formed a union, the Progressive Farmers and Household Union of America, to fight for fair wages and better treatment from white landowners. This union was not just a symbol of their struggle, but a beacon of hope for many who had been downtrodden for so long. It represented a collective effort to reclaim their dignity and assert their rights in a society that had long denied them. Robert Hill, a black World War I veteran, emerged as a leader of the union. His experiences in the war had taught him the value of solidarity and the importance of standing up against injustice. Hill's leadership was instrumental in galvanizing the sharecroppers and giving them the courage to fight for their rights. He and other organizers encouraged black farmers to stand together and demand their fair share. They held meetings, discussed strategies, and planned their actions meticulously. The sense of unity and purpose among the sharecroppers grew stronger with each passing day. White landowners saw the union as a threat to their authority and way of life. They were accustomed to having complete control over the sharecroppers and were not willing to relinquish their power. The idea of black farmers organizing and demanding fair treatment was something they could not tolerate. Rumors spread about the union's intentions, with some claiming that black farmers were planning an uprising against white people. These rumors were fueled by fear and prejudice, and they quickly gained traction. The white community became increasingly paranoid, and tensions began to rise. The stage was set for a confrontation. The atmosphere was charged with fear and suspicion, and it seemed like only a matter of time before things would come to a head. Both sides were preparing for a showdown, and the sense of impending conflict was palpable. Fear and mistrust poisoned the atmosphere, and events were about to spiral out of control. The seeds of conflict had been sown, and the community was on the brink of a violent and tragic confrontation that would leave a lasting impact on the region. On the night of September 30th, 1919, a group of armed black sharecroppers gathered at a church in Hoop Spur, just outside Elaine. They were there to discuss how to protect themselves from white retaliation against their unionizing efforts. Suddenly, shots rang out. A white railroad security officer and a black trustee were wounded in the exchange of gunfire. It's still unclear who fired the first shot, but the incident ignited the powder keg of racial tension. News of the shooting spread like wildfire, quickly becoming distorted and exaggerated. White mobs, fueled by rumors of a black insurrection, descended upon Phillips County. The white mobs, now numbering in the hundreds, went on a rampage of violence against black residents. They shot men, women, and children indiscriminately, burning homes and businesses. The violence continued for days, with no regard for law or order. In the aftermath of the massacre, hundreds of black people were arrested and imprisoned. 12 black men, later known as the Elaine 12, were quickly convicted by all-white juries on charges of murder and conspiracy in connection with the initial shooting. These trials were a sham, lacking any semblance of due process. The defendants were denied adequate legal representation and coerced into confessing under duress and threats of further violence. Section 5. The Aftermath, Silence, Denial, and Lasting Scars. The Elaine Massacre was one of the deadliest racial massacres in American history. The exact number of victims remains unknown, but historians estimate that as many as 200 black people were killed. Despite the scale of the violence, the massacre was largely ignored by the national media at the time. White authorities downplayed the events, portraying them as a justified response to a black uprising. For decades, the Elaine Massacre remained a hidden chapter in American history. Survivors and their families lived with the trauma and injustice, their stories silenced by fear and indifference. Section 6. The Elaine Massacre and the Fight for Civil Rights. The Elaine Massacre, though largely forgotten for many years, played a significant role in the burgeoning civil rights movement. Taking place in 1919 in Elaine, Arkansas, this tragic event saw the brutal killing of an estimated 100 to 237 African Americans. The violence erupted when black sharecroppers who were organizing to demand fairer wages were met with deadly force by white mobs and local law enforcement. This massacre was one of the deadliest racial conflicts in U.S. history, yet it remained shrouded in silence for decades. Ida B. Wells Barnett, a pioneering journalist and anti-lynching crusader, traveled to Elaine shortly after the massacre. Her commitment to uncovering the truth and seeking justice for the victims was unwavering. Wells Barnett's investigative journalism was instrumental in bringing the horrific details of the massacre to light. She interviewed survivors, gathered evidence, and meticulously documented the events that transpired. She documented the atrocities and exposed the lies used to justify the violence against black residents. Her reports revealed that the black sharecroppers were not the aggressors, as was falsely claimed by the white authorities, but were instead victims of a premeditated attack. Wells Barnett's fearless reporting challenged the prevailing narratives and called for accountability and justice. Wells Barnett's reporting, along with the legal battles fought on behalf of the Elaine 12, brought national attention to the horrors of racial violence in the South. The Elaine 12 were a group of black men who were wrongfully convicted of inciting violence during the massacre. Their trials were marred by racial prejudice and legal injustices, but their plight caught the attention of civil rights organizations and activists across the country. The NAACP took up the case of the Elaine 12, and their appeals eventually led to landmark legal victories that challenged the fairness of trials involving black defendants in the Jim Crow South. These legal battles were pivotal in the fight for civil rights, setting precedents that would be used to combat racial discrimination in the legal system for years to come. The courage and resilience of those who fought for justice in the aftermath of the Elaine Massacre laid the groundwork for future civil rights advancements, reminding us of the importance of confronting and rectifying historical injustices. Section 7. Remembering Elaine, a call for acknowledgement and reconciliation. Nearly a century after the Elaine Massacre, efforts are underway to uncover the truth and memorialize the victims. In recent years, historians, journalists, and activists have worked tirelessly to bring the story of Elaine to light. Documentaries, books, and articles have helped to raise awareness about the massacre and its lasting impact. In 2019, on the 100th anniversary of the massacre, a memorial was dedicated in Elaine to honor the victims. This long-overdue recognition marked an important step towards acknowledging the painful past and promoting healing and reconciliation. Section 8. The importance of historical memory. Remembering the Elaine Massacre is not just about looking back at a dark chapter in history. It's about understanding the ongoing struggle for racial justice in America. By confronting the past, we can learn from the mistakes and injustices that have shaped our society. We can honor the memory of the victims by fighting for a more just and equitable future for all. The story of Elaine reminds us that silence is not an option when it comes to confronting racism and injustice. We must continue to speak out against hate, discrimination, and violence wherever they occur. Section 9. Conclusion. Lessons from Elaine, a century later. The Elaine Massacre stands as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of racial prejudice and unchecked violence. It is a story that must be told and retold to ensure that such atrocities are never repeated. As we reflect on the lessons of Elaine, we must remember that the fight for racial justice is far from over. We must continue to challenge systemic racism, promote equality, and work towards a future where all Americans are treated with dignity and respect. The legacy of the Elaine Massacre should serve as a call to action for us all to create a more just and equitable society.